Welcome to episode 209 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm sharing a message for educators who are just not okay right now. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript or find our Truth for Teachers podcast community on Facebook. It's so essential right now to prioritize your self-care in order to avoid burnout and compassion fatigue. The Jabu Mind app is the only mindfulness app specifically designed for school teachers. Using the research-based iRest method, the app features daily mindfulness exercises, and all premium content is free through the pandemic. You have given and continue to give, and now it's time to receive. Download the Jabu Mind app today in the App Store or on Google Play. It's Jabu Mind, Jabu Mind app. If you need more practical support and training for teaching remotely, check out AJ Giuliani's online learning master course. It's entirely self-paced, and there's separate elementary and secondary programs. It's one of the best resources I've seen so far in terms of offering specific teacher-tested strategies for remote and hybrid learning. You can get 20% off with the coupon code ANGELA. Just visit my affiliate link in the show notes. So I decided to scrap the topic that I had planned for this week and speak to the teachers who are not okay right now. And I wanted to put that phrase right in the title of this episode and specify who this is intended for, because I know there are a lot of teachers who do seem to be okay overall. Some of you all work for supervisors who are supportive, or you're in districts that are pretty reasonable about the expectations right now, and these educators feel like they're managing everything all right. May not be perfect or optimal, but you're doing okay. And for those folks, it can be disheartening to be constantly bombarded with messages about how terrible everything is. I never want to paint education as this hopeless dystopian nightmare, particularly for people who are making it work and are staying pretty optimistic about the whole thing. I also know that educators are giving their all every single day, and you all are finding ways to help kids learn. And I never want all of that hard work to go uncredited, as if teachers have just rolled over and given up. There's a lot of good stuff happening right now, and I've released a number of podcast episodes since March that have highlighted the great work that's happening and the replicable ideas and practical suggestions and other topics that are intended to energize you and give you hope. That's what some folks need right now. They need to focus on what's working, and I have tried to provide some of that too. But today, I want to speak to the people who don't want more distance learning tips. They don't want to hear about how to make hybrid learning work. Right now, they just need to hear someone validate their feelings, validate what they're experiencing. And if you're struggling right now and you just can't make it make sense, I want you to know that I understand that. Sometimes I look around and I feel like I am the only one who still feels like we're in a pandemic. I see the rush to get back to replicating all of our old norms for productivity, and I'm just baffled by it, particularly when it comes to the expectations for teaching and learning. So if that's how you're feeling, keep listening. I want you to know you're not alone in these feelings, and I think there are some ways to let them guide you toward the results that you want. You know, ever since the first school reopening plans were released this summer, I have felt like I am living in an alternate reality. It was always my hope that COVID would be the great pause, as some have called it, or the great awakening, as it's been called. At this time where we question the status quo, when we reimagine systems and we finally start doing fewer things better instead of trying to do all the things all the time. I do think that these past few months have pushed us socially and personally to create change in these areas, and it's really shaken things up. But COVID has been more like sand in the gears of a relentless productivity factory, rather than the burning down and rebuilding of that factory. Are you following me here? Like, maybe a better analogy is like a ship. I feel like, so if you picture like a large cruise ship, the gears that make our educational system turn have been moving in the same direction for a long time, and it's like we're trying to change the direction of that ship. You can't reverse course instantly with a large ship, especially when it was going full steam ahead. It slows a little bit at first, and it keeps moving in that original direction. And then it treads water, sort of, like it stays in the same place. It doesn't move forward at all, even though every engine is hard at work. Until finally it gets momentum in the new and intended direction, and goes off that way slowly until it picks up speed. It's a process of changing direction, right? And I feel like that is what's happening right now with schools. Only there's like 20 different captains, and each one is trying to steer in a different direction. And teachers are like the engines that are working at top speed and somehow going nowhere. Now, I don't know if that analogy holds. I don't know anything about nautical travel. It's just something I was thinking about when I was outlining this episode. But, I think there's some good news if that analogy holds, because it means that the treading water and the seemingly not going anywhere is part of the process. Eventually, we will get some momentum. We will get going in the direction that we want to go in. Hopefully, that will be a better direction. But it is a lot of work in the meanwhile. And it's very hard to work so hard when you can't see where we're going, when the destination is just as unclear as the path to get there. Sometimes I'm not quite sure, what are we working for? Are we just trying to replicate all the old standards and tests from last year? Are we going to adjust the curriculum at all? How is that going to work? And I've watched some of these school reopening plans, these hybrid models, as well as the remote learning directives, as well as some of the in-person directives. And I'm just like, they don't really expect this to work, right? Like, this is going to be terrible for teachers and kids. This can't seriously be the plan. Like, when I first heard about the idea of having teachers just live stream their face-to-face classroom instruction for some kids to watch at home, I heard about that for the first time back in May from a friend who works for a major charter school company. And she told me that that was going to be one of the options they were giving. And I was like, friend, you're kidding me. There is no way they will ever do that, right? That is literally the worst idea I've ever heard. The kids will hate it. It is terrible pedagogy. It's impossible for the teacher to manage. You cannot teach in person and online at the same time. That's two separate jobs. It's two separate pedagogies. It's two, I can't even count all the privacy violations. Not to mention the pressure on teachers to have their classrooms live streamed into homes with who knows what people watching and picking apart their every single move. This is not going to actually happen, right? And she was like, I don't know, Angela. I really think they're going to try this. It makes no sense to me either, but they're not listening to me. And lo and behold, not only is that happening in her charter school company, but it's happening all over the U.S. It's happening in way more places than I thought would ever offer that option. And it's just ludicrous to me. It's the worst of both worlds, in my opinion. And yet, here we are with just outrageous that's just one example, right, of some of the outrageous things that the teachers and kids are living with right now because of politics and community pressure and the need to prove that teachers are working, the need to give parents 6 hours a day of face-to-face instruction like they feel like their kids are entitled to, and who knows how many other reasons that just have nothing to do with what is actually best for kids or actually sustainable for teachers who are human beings living in a pandemic and also need to have their needs and their feelings and their well-being considered. So I'm not going to spend any more time ranting about this or the 300 other models of schooling that I find appalling right now, because I know there really aren't any great answers. There really aren't any great solutions. And you as a classroom practitioner, you already know that none of this was making sense. You already knew how incredibly hard this was going to be on teachers and how wildly ineffective it was going to be for many students. You already knew that there are ways to do it effectively, but not when micromanaging teachers and kids is at the center of the plan, as it seems to be in so many places. So if that's how you're feeling, I just wanted you to hear someone else say it. And that's sort of my main purpose here. Like, I'm going to sort of ease into a more of like a pep talk and something that I hope is more hopeful and motivating. But my main purpose here is just like, if you are waking up every single day wondering, how did this become my life? What happened to my profession? I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I knew how to teach fairly well. And now I feel like I know nothing. I don't even recognize this job. I just can't believe, like, how is this my reality? If that's how you're feeling, I want you to know I see you. You are not alone in feeling that way, and I think those feelings are totally valid, and I would feel the same in your position. Sometimes it can feel like only people in your exact situation can understand how unsustainable and unmanageable and impractical the expectations are. So I want to validate what you're feeling and tell you that those of us who understand pedagogy and best practices, those of us who know the full scope of responsibilities of teaching, which go way beyond just the instruction, those of us who understand the unseen labor, the behind-the-scene tasks that you're never paid for, you're never credited for, you're never thanked for, those of us who know all that goes into this profession, we see what's happening to you, and we know it's not okay. Right now, it might feel like everyone who's not a teacher thinks teachers should just be doing more and working harder. And I want you to know that's not the answer. I see what's being expected of you, and I think it's just as bananas as you think it is. Working harder is not going to fix it. The problem is not that you are lazy, or you're not tech savvy, or you're not spending enough time online looking for lesson ideas. It is a really banana situation. And I think you are absolutely correct that what you're being asked to do is fairly impossible to the standard that you're being expected to uphold. Honestly, I've had to stay offline a lot lately because I just keep closing out social media apps in disgust because every time I think there can't be a new low in the ways that kids and teachers are being forced to endure schooling right now, there's something else to be outraged about. So these expectations that are being pushed out to you as if they are reasonable, they're being presented to you as if you should be able to do them, right? Like you should be able to wrap your head around this and make it work somehow. And I want you to know, I don't think you're being defeatist. I think you're correct that you're being set up to fail. That the people in charge who are making these decisions don't really understand everything that's involved in order to teach well. They really don't understand teaching and learning, and they're not centering that in the decisions. And that's why they just don't make sense. So if what's expected right now of many kids and families and teachers is not actually possible on a long-term basis, it's not sustainable, here's what to do. Trust your intuition. Trust your experience. Do not allow yourself to be gaslit into believing that what you're being asked to do is reasonable and you simply need to work harder. You could work 24 hours a day and it would not make the situation okay. Not for you, not for kids. We are still in a pandemic. I've seen think pieces come out about a post-pandemic world. We are not in a post-pandemic world. We are not yet. This is still crisis distance learning. This is emergency hybrid teaching. This is a modified face-to-face classroom instruction that we have for a global pandemic. Regardless of how much districts want us to pretend that we can replicate normal and just do what we did last year, we cannot. And I say this not to discourage you, but just to validate your feelings and what you know deep down is true. I want you to avoid running yourself ragged trying to meet expectations that are not designed with you or your students' best interests in mind. And instead, remember that all of this is temporary. Don't invest too much time and energy into a way of teaching that's already changed 5 times since last month. Find that MVP, that minimum viable product, and iterate from there. Keep things as simple as possible. And because this is temporary, there's a comfort in reminding ourselves it will not be like this forever. No, teaching is not going to go back to what it was before, but it won't look like this forever. We are in a temporary holding pattern of sorts, and you need to do whatever is necessary to survive until the next iteration of this profession, this society, this planet. It is a time of transition. We are changing course here. It's not really clear where we're going, what's happening. We're just all kind of spinning our wheels, right? It's a time of transition as we change direction. And when I say that what I want you to do is whatever it takes to survive, I mean physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. All of these types of health are essential. I want you to come out on the other side of these challenges and say, I made it. And I am a better teacher and a stronger person because of this. So it's necessary to set limits on what you will attempt to do right now and choose to intentionally drop the ball in the areas that matter less. Create boundaries on your time. And if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, if you're in the 40-hour teacher work week, if you've read Fewer Things Better or any of my books, you know this is something I have been saying for years and years and years, but some of you, honestly, are still waiting for someone else to do it for you. You're waiting for someone else to take things off your plate and make your job easier. And I think if COVID has taught us anything, it is that no one else is going to do this for you. No one is going to create those boundaries for you. They will take as much as you are willing to give, and they will keep asking for more. It will not end. So don't wait for other people to ease up on you. You set the limits on what you can and cannot do. Don't wait for a tragedy or a breakdown of some sort before you create boundaries on how fast you can work. Decide now how quickly you can turn around assignments and respond to messages and communicate those timelines to students and families. Let them know what to expect. Model for them how to be a human worker instead of a machine that just produces 24 hours a day. I encourage you, decide what you can reasonably accomplish right now. What is most important and focus on those things. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for not being able to do everything. The expectations right now for people's attention spans and mental bandwidth and energy levels and productivity levels, the expectations are not reasonable in a pandemic. All of those things are compromised for us right now. Most of us have less energy, less ability to focus. We're more stressed, we're more distracted, and yet the expectations are like nothing has changed. You know, there's a remake of Anne of Green Gables that's on Netflix. It's called Anne with an E, and I love one of the lines from it. She says, "I am a conscientious objector of the status quo." And I think that's what we need right now in our country and in our schools. We need conscientious objectors of the status quo. There are a lot of folks who are fighting really hard to get us right back to those pre-COVID status quo norms, as if that was somehow good enough, as if the old ways were working for teachers and kids. And turning that giant ship of the status quo is not an easy or a fast process, but it is so very needed. Turn it in the direction you want to go. Be a conscientious objector of the status quo. Don't just accept what you're being told to do right now. Resist the pressure to perform at optimal levels when we're not working in optimal conditions. Pushing yourself to work harder when your body is calling for rest will not help you get ahead. That approach is part of the old paradigm, which has to fall away and be replaced with a new way of working, a new way of teaching, a new way of learning that is humanized and centered on well-being rather than accomplishment. You deserve grace and compassion. Give those things to yourself when no one else is giving them to you. Rest tonight. Rest this weekend. Rest is necessary for your survival, and you don't need to apologize for it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.